day to actually raise our voice. For over 400 days now, we've been shouting out on the streets of London, on every street all over the world, trying to send a message for the UK government, for the entire world, that this genocide must stop. Unfortunately, and after what happened last night, all the health worker and the Palestinian Forum and every Palestinian, every human felt like we need to be here on the street to send this message loud and clear. Hands off our hospitals. Stop killing our children. Kidnapping doctors because they are basically performing their human duty of looking after patients is a war crime. This must end now. So thank you again for showing up. We have plenty of people who wants to raise their voice. In particular, we have the health worker who are looking after us in the UK, but they're feeling the pain of the health workers in Gaza, in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Syria, all over the Middle East, that they're paying the high price of looking after the vulnerable and the sick in hospitals. Listening the testimonies coming out of Gaza of nurses being strip searched, leaving the hospitals, women being removed of their hijab, the head of the hospital being arrested and interrogated, and God only knows of his faith. This is a shame on humanity. We've seen this before and we stood up, and the UK government is not listening. We need to let them know that we are not gonna go in silence. So first, let's give the warm welcome for Monet, a nurse, pediatrician nurse in the UK hospital looking after our vulnerable children. Monet?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Apologies, it's always a little bit difficult to find the words, but if the truth is in front of us, I'm sure the words will follow. So I've written a few notes. As a pediatric nurse who's practiced for almost 13, 14 years now, we know we still work in a eugenicist, medically racist system, but I've never felt more concerned regarding the general consensus of selective empathy in the UK healthcare and legal health bodies towards the ongoing genocide as something still labelled as controversial to condemn and sanction. Neocolonialism and white supremacy are embedded within global healthcare systems. If there are any nurses here or midwives, I'm sure you're familiar with the NMC Code of Conduct, which we have to abide by to work. The clause 16 states to act without delay if you believe that there is a risk to public protection, raise and if necessary escalate concerns you may have about public safety in your workplace or any other healthcare setting. Use the channels available to you. In Gaza, 9 in 10 children are under the age of 5 are affected by one or more infectious diseases. The International Society of Social Pediatrics and Child Health and the International Child Health Group expressed profound concern in their recent November petition. Still, unfortunately, refraining from calling it what it is, a genocide, such as conflict in the Middle East, which is incredibly ambiguous terminology that we need to abandon. This is an attack on healthcare, an attack on children, an attack on an entire nation to eradicate an indigenous population. Our colleague, Dr. Alex Mackleworth, a pediatric doctor who recently returned from Gaza, states, for kids, whatever situation they're in, they will find any opportunity to play. We try to reinforce that in our clinic. We see child after child with watery diarrhea, skin rashes of various kinds with signs of malnutrition, a few with chronic illnesses. Their parents having no idea where to go for a follow-up. Many of these acute illnesses are related to the current living conditions, poor sanitation, and difficulty to access clean water, hot and cold crowded tent camps allowing infectious diseases to spread easily. When pediatric nurses return from deployment to Gaza, they all state, out of all humanitarian crises they've worked in, this is like something they have never seen before. Palestine's children who are attacked, burned, starved, and frozen to death are our responsibility, just like any other innocent child in the world. We stand here continuously because we are empaths for our Palestinian colleagues, friends, and families. No matter how many times somebody tells you in your workplace, whether you're a healthcare worker or not, doesn't matter. You're too involved, stop bringing politics to the table, it's taking over your life, talk about something else, don't bring the mood down, we've all heard it. Following the footsteps of Palestinians, including all of you, you are literally holding the world together. Your community connection is resilience. Indigenous and racialized peoples who have fought for liberation and still fight for liberation have taught us this. You must fiercely defend your heart, your truth, and your compassion as your strength. Palestinians in the homeland and diaspora must know that we haven't forgotten. You must continue to keep resetting what humanity means for the world watching and our future generations. The ripples that this causes, yes, may not be fast enough, but ripples never stay stagnant in water. They will expand, and so will your movement, our movement, the Palestinian movement.
Yesterday, on the 27th of December 2024, IOF stormed and bombarded the Kamal Adwan Hospital, forcing patients out, stripped naked in the freezing cold, some barefoot, and also killing patients and staff. Shame! The IOF then set fire to the departments and left while staff were still inside. The staff tried to put the fires out, but there was no water because Israel cut the water supply. So instead, they used the fluid for dialysis machines, but this contained chlorine, and many suffered severe burns to their faces and hands, and others were incinerated alive. Shame! Patients and staff who were not detained were forced to go to the Indonesian hospital, which is not functional, has no fuel, no water, no food, and not even any windows to protect against the cold weather. We had responded by contacting David Lammy, Keir Starmer and Annalise Dodds for urgent diplomatic intervention to urge Israel to allow WHO to safely evacuate NICU babies and high dependency patients, to stop human rights abuses and the attacks on healthcare and staff. Hospitals must remain protected under international law, and the destruction of Kamal Adwan Hospital, along with all the other hospitals in Gaza, is a direct violation! The UK is a signatory to the Geneva Convention, and we must do everything in its power to prevent and stop genocide. And let us not forget, in November last year, we thought we witnessed the worst barbarity imaginable. The detainment, torture, and execution of Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, the destruction of Al-Shifa, the stories of rape, sexual abuses as a form of interrogation and torture, mass executions, mass graves, burning of refugee tents with children inside, whole families incinerated alive. We are now seeing history repeated. And this time in December last year, the IOF forced medical staff out of Al Nasser Hospital at gunpoint and left neonatal babies in ITU beds attached to ventilators and feeding tubes all alone. They starved of food, oxygen, and ultimately died alone crying. Their decomposed remains were found in the exact same position as they were left. These unimaginable state-sponsored crimes against humanity effectively greenlit the complete destruction of Gaza's healthcare. Israel, with the funding and political impunity of the US and UK, have decimated over 33 hospitals, killing over 1,200 healthcare workers, with over 200 detained illegally in torture camps. Dr. Hossam Abu Sufia now amongst them. And Gaza Health Ministry reported that they had stripped him naked and beaten him severely before they took him and detained him. Shame! Israel is using the destruction of healthcare as a strategy of genocide. Israel doesn't want new births. Israel doesn't want any healing or survival. They want it to ethnically cleanse the region as quickly as possible and by any means necessary. Shame! We will not stand silently and watch these crimes against humanity take place. We will not watch our colleagues be slaughtered again and again. We call on the UK government to support an immediate ceasefire agreement, to facilitate the opening of a humanitarian corridor, to allow much needed medical staff and aid in, to fast-track the visas for Palestinian children to receive medical treatment in the UK like they did for Ukraine, and to impose a two-way arms embargo and sanctions on the Zionist entity. We want boycotts, we want action! Arms embargo, energy sanctions! Arms embargo, energy sanctions!
Hello everyone. You are going to have to forgive me because I'm not articulate as my colleagues are. I think the reason why I'm here today and we are all here is our humanity, our rage, our anger. There's many things that we're feeling. I'm a physiotherapist, but first and foremost, I'm a human. And if I'm honest with you, I was asked to speak today and I struggled to find the words to continue to describe what I'm witnessing and what we are all witnessing. So I thought about what message would I like to give you, what difference could I possibly make? And then I looked at my colleagues across the world in Palestine, and specifically the Palestinian Medical Relief Society, who are working hard without any breaks, without food or water. And I looked at their recent statement that they gave, and I figured this would be the most appropriate thing for me to tell you today, is their message and their voice and what they want from us. It's in a few parts, so please bear with me. So this is a statement that they made on the 27th of December, a few days after Christmas. The Palestinian Medical Relief Society is urgently putting out a distress call in relation to the ongoing onslaught of attacks on healthcare in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. In particular, the recent harrowing scenes coming from Kamal Adwan Hospital and updates from the Indonesian and Al-Awada Hospital. The documented deliberate destruction of the healthcare system as a means to exterminate the Palestinians in Gaza, as outlined in the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry report, which was released on the 10th of October 2024, has sadly had no impact in slowing down the heinous scenes of violence against health workers and infrastructure, especially in the north of Gaza. The images of patients being forced to flee, health workers stripped, held hostage, hospital clinics bombed, attacked, should never, ever become the new normal. Yet somehow, despite the grievous scenes unfolding, the Palestinian Medical Relief Society is deeply concerned at the lack of coordinated global action to cease such atrocities and to assure unequivocally that the Palestinians have the same right to not only exist but the right to access healthcare, and that our health workers have the right to treat and heal with full protection of international humanitarian law. For 11 weeks, the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital has made several public appeals for the global protection and assistance for the healthcare sector in the north, with no support and no progress in negotiations being made. Today, the IOF stormed Kamal Adwan Hospital, detained anyone who was inside the hospital, forcing at gunpoint for moderate to severe patients to be evacuated to the Indonesian hospital, which is no longer functional. Now I'm just going to stop for a second. Could you imagine if that happened here in the UK, in Homerton Hospital, or UCLH Hospital, or Northwick Park Hospital? Where is the outrage from the rest of the community? The people are speaking up, but where is the outrage from our government? The people that are meant to be speaking for us and protecting us and speaking up for injustice. I go on. They set alight parts of the hospital, including the maintenance department, the lab, operating department, surgical department, and hospital stores, all burned completely. Do you know what this means? This means patients cannot be treated. This means those who have been injured, shot from blast injuries, from shrapnel injuries, they are unlikely to survive. This is just another way to exterminate human life. Patients and healthcare workers have been forced to strip and flee at gunpoint, many executed as they fled. Just picture that scene right now. This place is a very busy place. Could you imagine if you were all forced to strip to your underwear, held at gunpoint, to be shot while you're fleeing, or trying to protect your children? Could you imagine if this happens here? So why is it acceptable for it to happen in somewhere else? Is it because that's on a different doorstep and it's easy for us to look away? I have no more words about why the world and the government are not speaking up. This is why I'm reading the statement, because these voices need to be heard. The statement's almost finished. The IOF has also in the last week deliberately killed 5 health workers, including the only orthopedic specialist in North Gaza. Dr. Saeed Joda, Dr. Ahmed Samour, Esra Abu Zaida, laboratory specialist, Abdul Majid Abu Al-Aish, paramedic, and Mahir Al-Ajmari, paramedic. The Palestinian Medical Relief Society confirms that the Indonesian hospital and the Al-Awada hospital were also targeted by bombing of many of their departments, completing the systemic destruction of the entire health system in North Gaza, and in doing so guaranteeing the death of thousands of Palestinians due to lack of access to healthcare amidst not only a man-made famine and also a humanitarian disaster of epic proportions. What continues to unfold in the north of Gaza and across Gaza Strip is systemic destruction of healthcare facilities, the slaughter and detainment of health workers, to ensure the extermination of Palestinian population across Gaza by way of the fast and slow genocide. The Palestinian Medical Relief Society implores the World Health Organization and all international NGOs with presence in Palestine to use their positions to demand a humanitarian corridor to the north and to ensure the safe passage of all patients in urgent need of care. We also demand that the international community do all within their power to demand Palestinians have the right to healthcare and those responsible for ongoing crimes against healthcare and the Palestinian people. People are held in account of accordance with international humanitarian law and the rulings of the ICC and ICJ. This was their statement on the 27th. There's been more statements since. If you're not sure where to look, you can start off with the Palestinian Medical Relief Society. You can start off with Healthcare Human Rights Watch. You can look at Healthcare Workers for Palestine. You can see the facts and figures for yourself. This is not one death, not one murder, not one killing, not one child is acceptable. Nobody should be killed. No one should be subjected to those heinous... I have no more words, if I'm honest with you. I would like to leave you with one more thing before I go. I would like to leave with you a statement from the late James Baldwin. And I would like you to think about this statement when you leave here today. We can disagree on many things and still love each other, unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and the right to exist. Thank you.
I stand here as a Palestinian Christian with my Palestinian Muslim, with the support of our comrade, our Jewish Palestinian back in Palestine, and our Jewish community on the street of London. Please welcome our dear comrade, Glenn Seeger, the National Secretary for Jewish for Palestine. He's been a long supporter for Palestine. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you. There are no words anymore. Decades decrying abuse, a lexicon of a lifetime, and there are no words adequate to excoriate these acts by Israel. Frozen in a headlight, dumbstruck by the unbelievable, hoarse in voice, I scream into the void, not in my name. The school just after the war, books passed around, described in detail the personal barbarity and the mechanical genocide. Uncomprehending of the horror, my parents were silent. No words were spoken. The unconscionable was in the past and abroad. Though I was born at its height, on the date of the 5th anniversary of Kristallnacht, I never learned their thoughts. And now, how has it come to this? Mechanized annihilation, unleashed on civilians by new Jews, with old rabbis scripting an infanticide halakha in military yeshivas. Babies in intensive care have the power cut. 710 babies, 1,800 toddlers murdered. Thousands of amputees with no anesthetics. 7,000 orphans. Children targeted by sniper drones. A total of 17,400 children killed and rising day by day. A calculated, programmed massacre of the innocents. Famine weaponized. The deliberate starvation of 350,000 in North Gaza, now in its 3rd month. Thousands, including medical staff, detained without charge, beaten, tortured, many to death. How has it come to this? The seeds were sown at its conception by its founding father, Herzl. In Judenstadt, he wrote, "To clear a country of beasts, we should not take lance or spear, but drive the animals together and throw in a gelignite bomb. Weitz, the head of the Jewish Agency, there is no other way than to transfer the Arabs. Not one village, not one tribe should be left. Ben Gurion, the first Prime Minister, to the Haganah Army commander, the cleansing of Palestine remains the prime objective. Weizmann, President of the World Zionist Organization in 1920, there is a fundamental difference in quality between Jew and native. Shmilansky, founder of the Moshav movement in 1914, said, "We must not forget that we are dealing here with a semi-savage people." Israel Zionism is founded on deep racism, superiority and territorialism. Essential in its construction of Jewish identity is an enemy and a people to be subjugated. But during my youth and Israel's youth in the 1950s and 60s, it was shrouded by a cloak of socialism and humanism. But the process of oppression created resistance by the oppressed and generated a self-fulfilling existential threat. Thus the story of the Amaleks takes center stage. Netanyahu, televised, reads it to his army. The infanticide becomes ineluctable. The raising of hospitals and the assassination of doctors becomes an iron logic. And the chief rabbi, just the other day, unblinking on national media, with no reference to Gaza, promotes Hanukkah as the flickering flame of humanity, as a light unto the world, a rabbinical banishment of humanity from Gaza. Well, if this is the light unto nations, if this is the Jewish identity, then I am not a Jew. Because I am a Jew for justice. Because I am a Jew against genocide. I am a Jew against all genocides. For evil to triumph, good need only stand by in silence. So the deafening silence of BBC verifies their own complicity, as do the sealed lips of the human rights lawyer, our Prime Minister. Yeah, October the 7th was a crime against humanity, but to understand it, we must learn from the slave rebellions, particularly from the leading one of Haiti in 1791, where 7,000 white French civilians were murdered, the elderly, the women, the children, the babies. Yeah, it was a crime against humanity, but no one deigns to describe it as an act of terrorism because it's understood as generated by the brutality of slavery for which France and Britain bore responsibility. Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, said the war on Gaza did not start on October the 7th. It came out of 57 years of the occupation. Add to that the ethnic cleansing of 1948 and 67, the massacre of Deir Yassin and 19 more villages, of Sabra and Jatila and Jenin, and the 17-year blockade and bombardment of Gaza, and the 17 failed peace talks. October the 7th came out of 3/4 of a century of brutal repression for which Israel, the United States and the UK bear the responsibility. Nelson Mandela famously said that Africans' freedom would not be complete without the freedom of the Palestinians. This is profoundly true for Jews, for a people who oppress another can never themselves be free. Oh Palestine, I am numbed by your indescribable pain. I shake with rage and salute your incredible Samud. I will never surrender, for we are two peoples with one future. We will never be free until you are free. from all of the river, from all of the sea. We shall all be free. Solidarity!
Palestine. From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea. Thank you.
Gents, today I stand before you with a heavy heart and a solid commitment to speak out against the shocking violations of international law and basic human rights committed in Gaza. The recent Israeli attack on the Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza is not merely an isolated incident. It's a calculated act in a broader campaign of oppression, genocide, apartheid against the Palestinian people. The attack on Kamal Adwan Hospital is a direct violation of international human law. Medical facilities are sacred spaces under the Geneva Conventions, protected to ensure care for the wounded and sick without discrimination. They are meant to be free from military interference, and any attack on these facilities constitutes a war crime. Yet, we see that Israel stormed this hospital, burned its surgical department and the lab, destroyed the generators, and forcibly displaced 350 civilians, including medics, under the barrel of a gun. 5 medical staff were murdered in cold blood. This is not called collateral damage. This is preconceived barbarity. Shame! The Israeli army justified this atrocious act by claiming, as usual without evidence, that the hospital was a military stronghold.
Liars!
Liars! This echoes a pattern of baseless accusations as documented by the UN and the ICJ. In 2009, a UN fact-finding mission found no evidence to support claims that Gaza hospitals or ambulances were used for military purposes. Yet, such fabricated narratives persist to justify atrocities. Liars! Amnesty International has called it for what it is, a genocide.
Yes!
It is a genocide, the mother of all crimes. Israel's actions meet every criterion under the Genocide Convention. The head of Amnesty has warned the international community that arms transfer to Israel implicates states, including the UK, Germany, US, in this genocide. Every missile, every bullet, every weapon transferred to Israel facilitates the systemic destruction of Palestinians, of our people. This attack is not an anomaly, but is part of a long-standing campaign. Decades of blockade have transformed Gaza from a thriving society into an impoverished ghetto, as the UN has called it. Hospitals already lacking basic supply due to the blockade are now being targeted and destroyed, leaving no safe haven for the injured or the sick. Even the ICJ issued a provisional measure in January 24, which ordered Israel to prevent genocide in Gaza. These atrocities continue unabated. The Kamal Adwan Hospital attack represents a gross violation to human rights, medical ethics, and the holiness of life. This is not just a tragedy for Gaza, it is a stain on the conscience of the world.
Yes! Shame!
Shame! We must ask ourselves, how many more hospitals must burn? How many more children must die? How many more families must be uprooted before the international community takes a decent action? The time for silence and complicity has long passed. The ICJ rulings, statements by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, MSF, as well as the cries of the oppressed, demand an action from us. We must hold Israel accountable for its war crimes and genocide. We must demand an immediate cessation of hostilities and ensure that aid reaches the people of Gaza. Most importantly, we must reaffirm the fundamental truth that the indigenous Palestinian people are equal human beings, deserving of dignity, freedom, and life. Thank you.
New wave of colonization and imperialism and blood-sucking of humanity needs to stop. And if we can't stop it, our generation, the most intellectual generation human being exists now, then we have failed ourselves. But I believe in people. I believe we can do it, and we should do it. Boycott any product that supports the genocide. The list is long, from M&S to Lidl to Starbucks to BB, who is willing to take the petrol out of Gaza after killing all the Palestinians in Gaza. Free, free! Free!